Hey guys, Lee from Inner Peak. So in this video we're looking at part 2 of the personal trainer level 3 qualification. So in part 1 we finished off looking at the SMART goals and how they are to be reviewed. We're now going to continue on to page 52 in your learner record, looking at the 8-week program. Now there's a separate video which explains exactly how to do your 8-week program that you can have a look at, and hopefully that will clear up any sort of confusion and it'll make your life a little bit easier if you watch that video. So looking at the 8-week program plan overview, now this page here in the learner record you don't have to complete because I've provided you a template, a separate template for an overview. This is a bit of an outdated one and it's very small as well. You wouldn't be able to get a lot of information on here. But if you were to use this in your own practice, this would show the planned training sessions on the different days. So for example, here you've got resistance training and then CV, so it splits it down into that. So it might say twice a week hypertrophy, something like that in the resistance there. And you might be doing just one CV session a week, doing something like LSD or fartlek training. So you could write that in there and that would just give your client a little one-page overview so they know what they're looking at. But like I said, there's a separate template for you guys to complete, which is a little bit more up to date. So from here onwards, from 53 onwards, we do need to complete this. Now in your 8-week program, part of the criteria, once you've completed that 8-week program, and I recommend you do that first before starting here on page 53, you have to complete 2 program cards. So the first program card will include a warm-up, as we've got here. Then it'll include basically a snapshot of one of the weeks from your 8-week program. In here you've got the CV types, then you've got all the resistance training sections, the functional fitness and the core exercise. You then move on to a cool down and you finish off with some stretches, and that's the session done. Then you move on to program card 2. So let's just go through this in a little bit more detail. So for program card number 1 then. Now the qualification requires you to actually choose week number 4 from your 8-week program when you're filling out program card number 1. So this here you can just put in brackets and write at the top here week number 4 from your 8-week program. Now this is asking you for a warm-up. So in this qualification we use something called a ramp warm-up. The example is in the manual, you can look that up, and if you did the Gym Instructor Level 2 course you'll be familiar with this. So what it stands for, the R stands for raise the pulse. So in the first activity here you're looking for a pulse raiser, something to get the heart rate up. So it might be that you choose a treadmill, for example, for 3 minutes or 4 minutes. The work domain here, you're going to write what it actually is. So it's a CV training type and it's working all round body. Here is the intensity. So again, you'll be familiar with RPE when you actually do your practical sessions, which stands for rate of perceived exertion. So it's a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being dead easy, 10 being maximum. And during a warm-up you're going to be starting around about RPE 1 and then working your way up maximum to about RPE 6. So in there, a gradual increase in RPE 1 to 6. And then depending on what activity you chose, so if say for example it was a treadmill, for a few minute warm-up, you just need some coaching notes in here explaining how to do a treadmill exercise. So for example, stand in the middle of the belt, heel to toe action would be a couple of good specific coaching points. And then the next part is the A, which stands for activate key muscles. So whatever muscles you're thinking about using in your main session, which in this you're going to be doing an all-round body workout, so you need to choose some exercises here that's going to work the whole body. So for activating key muscles, say for example we were looking at doing a chest session, or we're just going to be doing some heavy bench press, you know, you need to obviously activate the pecs, you need to activate the triceps, and also the shoulders and the core. So you would think about choosing some warm-up exercises that covered all those areas. But again, for the purpose of this, it's an all-round body workout, so we need to do some all-over body kind of dynamic warm-up exercises. So in here you might have a standing pec stretch, you might have some arm circles, you might have some trunk twists in there, and that would just activate things like your pecs, your back muscles, your shoulder muscles, and all the muscles that you're going to need. The work domain, these are going to be dynamic stretches in here, so, and you are looking at, again, an all-round body approach. In here now, again, RPE, because we've kind of raised the pulse, we're looking at a different RPE here now, so the heart rate should be sitting around about 4 or 5, and it's probably going to stay around that range. Again, it might go to about 6. And in here, coaching notes again, so I would suggest maybe put in 2 dynamic stretches maybe here. So again, if it was like, you might have some shoulder circles in there, and some trunk twists maybe, and then some coaching notes just to reflect that here. On to the M, which stands for mobilize the key joints that you're going to be working. So mobilization. Again, you can do this via some dynamic stretches. So we're looking at, for the all-round body, we're looking at mobilizing the knee joints, the hip joints, shoulder joints, ankles, wrists. So in here you can slightly increase the intensity now, and maybe you'll do some squats with an overhead reach, and you might do some lunges maybe with a twist thrown in there. Again, it's going to be an all-round body workout, some dynamic stretches, target RPE a little bit higher this time, so we're picking up the pace a little bit, so maybe RPE 5 again to 6. Coaching notes on how to complete those exercises that you've chosen. And then the P stands for like a final preparation or a final pulse raiser. So it's something that at the end of the workout that's just going to elevate the heart that little bit more, so that you're ready for the main exercise session. So say, for example, you did some burpees in there or something, because that's, you know, it's going to work the whole body and it's going to be a little bit more intense. Again, cardiovascular, all-round body, and RPE is going to be higher this time, so it might be 6 going up to like 7, and then some coaching notes finally just to explain how to do a burpee. Okay, then moving on to the main program card. So once we've completed the warm-up, we're now looking at your 2 CV types. So again, going back to the first video we did on the personal trainer, we looked at the criteria right at the start of what was required to fill out your 8-week program, and a requirement was each week that we're going to do 2 CV types. And remember, we spoke about LSD, long slow duration training, and also fartlek training. So if I chose those 2 systems, I would put them in here. So for the CV equipment, again, if I was using a treadmill or a bike, I would put that in here. But I would also put just alongside there the 2 training types that I'm choosing. So LSD at the top there for my first choice, and fartlek for my second choice. Times. Now remember, this is week 4. Program card 1 is week number 4 from your 8-week program. So have a little look at your 8-week program, and you will have noticed that it's a deload week. So the first deload week on your program card, week number 4, you will basically copy the times that you had on week 4 into here. So for your LSD, you might have had something like 20 minutes. Fartlek, you might have had something like 6 minutes. So just copying the times from your 8-week program. Target RPE, obviously for LSD, it's going to be a long, slow duration, so it's slow, steady state training. So the RPE is just going to be sitting around about 5 to 6. But for fartlek, that's obviously high intensity training, so HIIT training, interval training. So it might drop as low as RPE 6 maybe, but going right up to RPE 9 potentially in some cases. And then again, we're looking at coaching notes. So depending on whatever equipment you chose, bike, treadmill, you just write in a few key specific coaching points in there to explain how to use the treadmill. And then we're moving on to your resistance training. Now again, all you're doing is copying this from your 8-week program. Approach number 1, you might have had on there triceps or something like that. And then moving on to giant sets, maybe forced reps. Whatever the 4 systems you chose need to go in there. And then you're simply copying the exercises, again from your 8-week program that you had. So your tricep might have been a squat, followed by a leg press, followed by a calf raise, something like that. And then you're copying again from your 8-week program the sets, the reps, and the rest periods. So it might be 2 sets, 10 reps, 1 minute rest period. And then, unfortunately, you've not got much space here, but you're going to have to try and squeeze in some key coaching points. And if you can't squeeze all of them in there, you can maybe fill them out at the bottom here, or you can have a separate supplementary sheet that you can write them on. But you're just putting in there, so say for example your first exercise is a squat, so you might have on there keep a nice flat back, strong core, heels flat, and then work through each exercise. And you're simply filling out all the rest exactly the same way. Then you come to your functional fitness, which again was explained on your 8-week program video, and the same for the core. So you might have in there farmer's walk, how many sets, how many reps, coaching points in there. Core exercise, you might have a plank or a sit-up. Again, sets, reps, rest, coaching points. Moving on to the cool down. So the cool down at the end of the workout is going to be on another piece of CV equipment, but it needs to be different than the ones you've used. So you might put on there something like a cross trainer or a rowing machine, something like that, something different, as long as it's different. Time is going to be 5 minutes for this. Target RPE this time is going to be a gradual decrease in intensity, so it's the opposite of a warm-up. So we'll start at RPE 6, for example, and working down all the way to RPE 1. So you're taking that heart rate from where it's been at during the actual exercise, the main theme of the exercise, and then you're taking it all the way down to resting. Again, some coaching notes in there explaining how to perform whatever CV piece of equipment you chose. So if it's a rower, you need some good specific rowing machine examples in there. And then finishing off the actual workout with some stretches. So you're required to do 3 upper body and 3 lower body stretches on your actual practical assessment. So you'll show whichever stretches you're choosing here. So it might be that you do a chest stretch, followed by a shoulder stretch, followed by a tricep stretch, then maybe a quad, hamstring, glute. Time to be held. Now this will depend which one of these you choose, either static, maintenance, or developmental. So if it's just static, it'll be 10 to 15 seconds. Developmental might be 30 seconds long, a bit longer. Or you can choose a PNF stretch, which again, that will be explained to you on your practical sessions. And then simply some notes again, coaching notes on how to actually perform that particular stretch. Then we're moving on to program card 2. Now we fill this out exactly the same way as we filled out program card 1. So all we're doing is copying the information. This time we're copying program card 2 from week number 8 of your 8-week program. So you can write that in at the top here again, week 8. You can use the same warm-up as you did on program card number 1 if you want to make it easier. So you're just copying the same information basically. If you want to change it, that's up to you. So you can choose some different exercises. In here now, obviously, if you watched the 8-week program video, you'll have seen in there that we talked about changing the exercises kind of from week 5 onwards, so that the client doesn't get bored and that the body's getting some different stimulus. So in here, you might have the same approaches. You might have your tricep, your superset, etc. The same as what you had on with program card number 1. But there will be a couple of different exercises now. So just remember to reflect that. So you're not copying exactly from program card 1. And obviously your sets and your reps, or if you chose reps, that is, your reps are going to be different here, obviously, from week 4. So again, copying these out basically from week number 8. Again, coaching points for each of these systems. And then same again for the cool down, 5 minutes. Again, you're choosing a different piece of equipment than the ones that you used in the warm-up or the main theme. And again, filling out exactly the same as week number 1. Again, stretches in here, you can just put exactly the same if you want to as program card 1, or you can change it up just to give the client a little bit of a different option. That's entirely up to you. Once you've completed that, you come onto this page, page 59, which is your program card review and modification. So every good program will have planned reviews. So these are put into place so that you can sit down with your client and make any necessary changes if they're needed. So the benefits of that are your client might not be progressing in a certain way that you think they should be, or your client might not be enjoying certain exercises that you've given them. So this is a chance to sit down and just make any necessary changes. So here you can see, number 1, how well have the training sessions met your client's needs and contributed towards their goals. So it might be something in there, you just put in a few sentences. My client is progressing really well, responding really well to particularly the squat that we've given them. You know, they're flying through the sets. They don't like using treadmills too much, so we're going to look at changing that. Number 2, how well does the client consider the training sessions and the journey towards their goals are progressing? So again, you're asking your client, do you think everything's going good? Anything we could change? And you put in a few sentences in there. Have you agreed and made any adaptations? So basically any changes, progressions or regressions to meet your client's needs to work towards the goals. So in our case, we talked about changing some exercises from week 5 onwards. So you can mention that in there. And it might be that you have changed some goals slightly that maybe weren't realistic, or you've changed some exercises just to kind of help them towards the goals. So you're just listing that in there. A couple of sentences again. Has there been any revision to your client's goals? So it might be that you've changed slightly. It might be that they wanted to bench press 100 kilograms. Now they're actually doing really well. They're actually going to go for 110. So again, you're making a note in there. On to the next thing here. This is for your assessor to fill out. So don't worry about this page. Leave page 60 for your assessor. Page 61 here is again for your assessor to fill out during your practical assessment. But you can use this to get an idea about what your assessor is actually going to be looking for. So at the start here, this is the introduction. And again, you'll be familiar with all this now going from your practical sessions. This is the introduction. So your assessor will be looking, did the learner verbally screen the client to check his or her readiness to participate and assess the readiness of motivation of the client to participate. So in other words, you'll be saying to your client when they first arrive, how are you doing? Have you got any injuries? Etc, etc. Are you motivated? Are you ready to roll? And then your assessor will put a little tick in there to say that you've asked them those questions. Did you explain the health and safety? Did you outline what is actually going to happen in the session and how it will link to the goals? So that's what your assessor will be looking for. So you're looking for 3 ticks there on your introduction. Then you're moving on now to your systems and your actual main session. So these are the CV. So you might be LSD in there, fartlek. Moving on to your resistance training approaches. So it might be your tricep, your superset, your giant set, etc, etc in there. And this is what your assessor is going to be looking for. So you can read through these, just get an idea of what it is they're looking for. But basically, if when you're doing your practical sessions, if you do your nasty system correctly, all of these will be ticked off. Finishing off with core functional fitness. Again, assessors looking for the same criteria. Then ending the session, this is just your summary. So you'll sit your client down, you'll ask them some questions. Again, you'll practice this on your practical session, and this is what your assessor's looking for. Hopefully, at the end, you'll get a nice pass and you'll get some feedback, which on this page here is where your assessor will use to give you some good detailed feedback about the actual session, and they'll sit you down at the end of the practical assessment and talk through this with you. This bit here you will then get a chance to fill out after your practical session is completed. So it's your chance to sit and self-evaluate about your own session, and you can read through these, and this is just in your own words, so there's no pass or fail. It's just a chance for you to look back and review the actual session that you did. Then your assessor will give you some feedback in here about your practical session and your self-evaluation, and again you'll get a pass, hopefully. Finally, in your learner record on your personal trainer qualification, you come to this page or this worksheet, which is separate now. So this, you can start filling this out at any time during the qualification. This is the business acumen section, and this section is designed just to get you to have a look at how it is to operate as a personal trainer business wise. So, you know, how to use IT systems, how to confidentially look after your client's information, learn more about health and safety in business, learn a little bit about how to, you know, work with tax and how to set up, maybe you're going to set up as a sole trader, things like that, how to look at, you know, small business plans. So all this section is doing is asking you questions, getting you to go away, do some research, and then come back and put some answers in these boxes. So then at the end, when the assessor is marking this, they'll identify how well you understood the business section. And again, there's some sections in the manual that will help you with this. But also your client, your tutor will sit you down during some of the practical sessions, the face-to-face sessions, and talk to you about elements of business. You know, what systems is best to use when you're onboarding your clients, or, you know, when you're doing your marketing, using things like Canva, even artificial intelligence these days, things like ChatGPT are really useful to help you formulate things like business plans and exercise programs, etc. So just have a go at any time during your qualification. You can start filling these out. If you struggle with any of these, just leave them blank, and again your tutor will help you fill these out or help you understand the questions when you actually meet face to face. So quite a few pages to actually work through there, but you're basically finishing on page 72, and then this page 73 is for your assessor to give you some feedback at the end of that worksheet. But that's basically it, guys, for the personal trainer learner record. Hopefully, again, you found that useful, and we look forward to seeing you again soon, and look forward to getting you qualified as a personal trainer.